Hi, Tom Gangler, Business Development at South Point Financial Credit Union, and today we're doing a video on budgeting, an opportunity to take control of your finances. Whether you are saving up for something special, putting some goals in front of you, starting a budget, and using a budget is a great way to get there. Along for this conversation, I have my friend Carissa here. Carissa, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Carissa Rodewald, and I am the Digital Experience Manager here at South Point.
Awesome. Thanks for joining me. So when you say the word budget, what are some of the things that come to mind to define that word?
Tracking, identifying incomes, expenses, and balance.
Income and expenses, where a budget starts right there.
Right.
So when it comes to your income, you think of your paycheck or your salary, but there's probably other ways that people make money. Could you talk a little bit about other income sources?
Sure. So, as Tom mentioned, the income from a paycheck is definitely something that you want to be aware of for the month. Sometimes people choose to work part-time jobs, so to generate some additional income other than their main source of income. Oftentimes we'll see folks that are selling goods, maybe on garage sales or reseller sites in order to generate income. Also, think of recycling cans. That would be income that you're generating for additional expenses in your budget.
And that's important with a budget to make sure you account for all of your income. On the other side of the income, you have your expenses. What comes to mind when you hear the word expenses?
Expenses, when we talk about expenses, we think about our fixed expenses, which would be the things that don't change. So oftentimes that's your living expenses like a mortgage or rent. It would be your utilities, so how much it costs to have electricity and phones and things of that nature. It would also be like your food. Food is something that you have to pay for every month. Variable expenses would be some of those, maybe those fun expenses. So your entertainment, possibly some gifting or insurance, cost tabs would be an example, like car tabs, things that don't come up every single month maybe. Some varied expenses, not necessarily monthly expenses.
So most of us know how much we make per hour or maybe what our salary is, but we also have people that work part-time or their income fluctuates. Or if you were to ask me, how much did I spend on groceries last month? How does a person, when putting their budget together, where do they get this information from? What's the best route?
Sure. Usually the first place that we start is by pointing our members or people that we're trying to help with some budgeting information to their statements. So every financial institution allows access to a monthly statement via paper or email. So we would point you to your statement of your bank records to identify what checks have cleared your account or what purchases have hit with a debit card, and really try and calculate what happened in that month, identify what happened in that month. Some people don't like to deal with the paper, and they're strictly going based on maybe their online banking or mobile banking app. But if you're looking at that history and identifying what those expenses really look like, that's the first place we're going to point you to, really, and starting with first day of the month to end of the day of maybe the month prior.
So you're getting this information, you're finding your income, you're figuring out your expenses and categories and everything like that. Obviously, you need to find a way to organize that information. What are some of the resources out there that people can use to start their budget?
Sure. There are a number of resources out there, and a lot of it is going to be based on preferences. So some people prefer to work in paper, others prefer to work in apps, and others yet prefer to work in spreadsheets. So if you think about keeping track of your budget, you can do that on a simple spreadsheet or a really complex spreadsheet. Really coming up with an income category and an expenses category and totaling. Did the numbers balance at the end of the month? Some people prefer apps. So like in our South Point Financial Credit Union app, we have a tool that's called Money Management that allows for our members to track what income's coming in and what expenses are going out. And it actually categorizes those expenses for you. So some people are very comfortable with that process. And others, again, like paper. So you may have really be most comfortable pulling up a notebook and a pen and paper and documenting or writing in columns what expenses were done for the month and what income came in for the month, and then manually calculating. Any method of those works. It really does depend on the preference.
So you've put your budget into work, whether you're using a spreadsheet or an app or anything like that, and there's going to be a calculation made, right? A couple things could happen. One thing that might happen is you might have funds left over in your budget at the end of the month. Yay. What would be some ideas to do with those leftover funds right there?
Sure. I would say that funds left over is everybody's hope at the end of the month, or everybody's maybe small goal they're trying to reach is that they have funds left over. One thing to look at when you do have funds left over from your income and then your budgeted items is what expenses do you have outstanding? So are you paying interest on credit card debt, or possibly a vehicle loan or a home loan? Would it be wise to consider paying down on something that's costing you a lot of money in interest? Typically, we would tell you, yes, it is wise to pay down on some of those things that are costing you more money. Other times, it might be that, nope, there's none of those high interest situations, and now it's time to start savings for future expenses. So maybe things that you want to do that are large, or even just some small future expenses that might upset your budget in the month coming.
More than likely, for most people doing their budget for the first time, they are going to run out of money, correct? They will end up with a larger expenses than income. What would you give for advice on that type of situation?
Sure. First, I would tell you, don't beat yourself up about it. Don't consider that a failure. Just consider that as part of the process of learning and identifying where you're at. Everybody needs to understand where they're at to know how to move forward or to make an adjustment. So if you found that at the end of your first month that you were negative, you didn't have enough money to meet the expenses that you had for yourself, that's where those categories come into play, where maybe you have a food category, an entertainment category, or a miscellaneous expenses category. How much money was spent in that food category on food that was needed? Was it excessive trips to the grocery store? Or maybe it was more eating out than typically you would want to or want to afford to do. Those are places where now you get to make those decisions. Do I really want to spend that much money each month of my income on food? If not, make some choices based on those budget dollars. Maybe it's that your entertainment, maybe you went bowling, maybe you went skiing or to the arcade or shopping, and you had a lot of those events in that month. Is that stuff that maybe you need to plan or maybe reduce how much you spent in that category so that you can become closer to a balanced budget the next month?
Well said, and it does showcase the true value of what budgeting is all about when you can see where your money is going and have a plan for those dollars right there. So we've set up our budget for the month. We've made a plan for our dollars right there, and then it's time to put that budget into action right there. You need to start tracking your transactions, determining if you're using an app or a spreadsheet or paper-based method. There could be some pitfalls, hurdles, challenges with that as well too. What would someone who's starting a budget for the first time run into when they start to track?
I would say that they are going to find that maybe the balance isn't in balance, the budget isn't in balance. They're going to find that they are overspending. If you find that, don't just get discouraged. That doesn't mean you failed. That doesn't mean don't continue. That just means make an adjustment. Budgeting takes time, so plan on not getting it right the first month and maybe making progress in month 2 and making progress in month 3. It is time consuming, so it does take time to allocate, whether that's that weekly time or that monthly time on looking at the budget and looking at the expenses and am I in balance? Am I on track to be in balance at the end of the month? Invest that time up front, because once your budget is in balance and it's working, it really is going to require less time of you as long as your income and your expenses are really ironing out and you're finding that that budget is in balance each month.
How often would you advise someone to track their expenses? Is it a daily thing? Is it a monthly thing? Is it a weekly thing?
I think that's a personal preference thing as well. Everyone's payrolls oftentimes credit at different times, so really sometimes that's a really good time to check where you're at on payday. Money came in, did I make ends meet from last, or did things play out the way they were supposed to from my last payroll to my next payroll? So that's a really good time. But I would say at a minimum, you'd want to take a look at that monthly and make sure the month has balanced the way you had hoped. But again, it would be a preference on personal.
You mentioned budgeting gets easier the more you do it. When you set a budget up for once a month and then you get into month 2, is it as simple as just copy and pasting your prior budget, or is there more to it?
It really can be as simple as copy and pasting, but the one area that I would use caution in doing that is all those variable pieces. So oftentimes your variable expenses aren't able to be copy and pasted over. So if you're thinking about car tabs, for example, maybe you're planning for it in that savings process, but it's very easily something that you could forget to allocate for if you were only doing the copy and paste method and not really taking a peek.
So once you have your budget going and you've been rolling with it for a couple months, what are some things you could do to review your budget to maybe make some adjustments or life changes?
Really, it would be looking at where the numbers are coming in and then identifying what's important for you. So, now that I know where my budget is, I know it's either in balance or a little off balance. What is the ultimate goal for me? Am I wanting this for the financial peace of mind to know that I can pay my expenses? Or am I wanting this because my ultimate goal is to own a home or to purchase a vehicle or maybe to take a vacation? Maybe that's something I'm trying to plan for.
And that's something to think about, is we all have different goals in life. We all have different priorities. So taking an account into your budget to set aside your action plan right there, it's obviously a great opportunity. So far today we talked about what a budget is, why it's important, and given you the steps to start budgeting yourself. Things to expect: there's going to be some challenges, right? Accounting for the money, maybe not having enough left over. But that's what the budget's about, is you can review that data and make adjustments to your plan. And that's what a budget is. It's an estimate, it's a plan for what you're doing. But step 2 is you have to track that. You have to implement that budget, and you want to do your best to stick to it. There'll be times where it is very difficult to stick to it. It's your money. Ultimately, you have the decision, you have the power to make on where that money goes. But having that budget as a guide for you and for being able to track your expenses is going to be great. There's going to be celebration time for wins, putting money in your savings account, paying down debt, all those factors right there. Make sure you celebrate that right there. And there's also going to be challenges and frustrations, just taking the time to budget or busting your budget and running out of money at the month. But they're learning opportunities. And that's why it's important to budget. So hopefully you've had an opportunity to learn more about budgeting. Hopefully you're excited to start budgeting, and I appreciate you watching this video. Thank you.